Hey, I'm Scott from the TCM Marketing Department, and I am here today with David Grimes. David is the man. David is our Business Development Manager for Volusia County and surrounding areas, and you are watching the top 10 roofing install related questions answered. And this is the guy that's going to answer them. Now today the question is, why is standing seam more expensive and or better than exposed fastener? I think it's a trick question.
It is a little bit, absolutely. So when you start looking at the two different types of materials that you can put on the roof, whether it's a concealed fastener, standing seam, or a exposed fastener, depending on whether you're a homeowner or a contractor, will really kind of drive how you want to handle these things. As a customer or not a contractor, budget is obviously always going to be important.
Sure.
Your exposed fasteners are in the more budgetary range.
And some of the reason might be standing seam is more labor intensive to install, right? Versus
100%.
With our most popular exposed fastener, we're talking about a 3-foot wide panel.
Right.
And like with TCM lock or some of the other standing seam, that's 16-inch wide versus 3-foot wide. So.
Correct, yeah, and with that labor intensity, because with the standing seam, being a concealed fastener, you have to add in additional pieces of trim to hold the major pieces of trim down and use pop rivets to hold them in place. So, yeah, it is definitely more labor intensive because you basically use twice as many pieces of trim as you would on an exposed fastener roof.
So with standing seam, there's quite a few color choices to be had.
Correct. Yes. So with Tri-County Metals, we have a couple of different ways that we can go. We have our core defender charts, which is SMP or siliconized modified polyester, or we have our Max Defender, which is a floor pond paint system. And the thing to note about that paint system is the fact that it chalks the same color that it is painted. When the resins break down through UV and time and whatever.
That's great to know. And then, of course, with that same formulation for standing seam, we have the Coastal, which is the same paint formulation but on aluminum products. So
Correct.
In that brackish water or on the coast, you're not going to have the same rust hazards you would have with steel.
Right. And to kind of not wrap it up, but bring it back to why is standing seam more expensive, it's because the longevity that roof provides of how good it's going to look for a longer period of time, because it won't fade or chalk like an SMP, so it won't look different for longer. You don't have the screw issue that you have with exposed fastener, because with exposed fastener, your screws are placed outside of the panel basically, or on top of the panel. And those screws, the UV hits them, the neoprene washers can break down over time, and eventually you'll have to replace the screws, and you don't have that with a concealed fastener type system. So all of those benefits add up to, yes, it's more expensive, but it's also, it will last you much longer and you will have less worries with it because there's less penetrations and
right. Like yeah, any penetration in the roof is potential, but there is a little bit of middle road. When we talk about accessories, like for exposed fastener, we do have the lifetime screws where that neoprene is all encased in the tip of the head of the fastener, versus just a regular wood screw where that's going to be exposed. So, but of course, those lifetime screws, as we call them, they're a little bit more expensive. So there's levels to both topics. I mean, even when we're talking standing seam, we have the TCM lock that has a built-in nail strip versus like the SL lock, which has a clip system, and including our new TCM continuous clip, a longer clip, so it's a little bit quicker to install. So
right.
All kinds of levels to think about there.
Yeah, and to your point on the screws that you're talking about, they're a wood zack screw. That's the terminology for that long life or warranty. It's a warranted screw.
Right.
And But the thing to note, and something that I've always talked to contractors about when you get into that budget conscious customer, is that at the end of the day, that exposed fastener roof that better fits their budget, you have to look at it as the savings that you're going to get. Your heating and cooling, and Oak Ridge National Laboratories did this independent study that said, metal roofing can save you 40% on your heating and cooling costs over a year. All of those things tie into that. In 20 years, or let's even go shingle wise and say 15 years, because insurance companies are now making people replace their shingle roofs in 15 years. Let's say in 15 years, you're not replacing an entire roof with an exposed fastener roof. Worst case scenario, you change out the screws, and that's maybe $1,000 for somebody to get up there and pull every screw out and replace it if you had to, and that's still thousands of dollars cheaper than replacing an entire roof. So
absolutely,
it definitely determines. Yes, standing seam is more expensive, but it is worth the money to go that route for longevity and for peace of mind and all of that. But don't count out exposed fastener, because I'll be honest with you, it's what's on my house.
Absolutely. Actually, that's what's on my house too. And so I think really also, I think if you're a homeowner and you're watching, a lot of it's going to come down to aesthetics. When you look, at your roof after it's installed, what do you want to see? And some people have a definite preference, and like that classic Key West look with the 5E versus the tall, thin type rib on the standing seam. And then of course, even with standing seam, you'll have varying rib heights and then spacing of that panel. And that's where tools like our Click Color Studio can really come in and help, because you can take your house, you can map it out in our free Click Color Studio, and all day long play with colors and roof panels right there and see what that's going to look like on your house. That might be a real benefit for you.
It's a huge benefit, as I was actually a previous employee of a customer of Tri-County for a long time, and I used that tool has been around for a little while with some other companies and whatnot, but I used that tool, and I use it today with my own contractors to line up those pictures so they can take them into the sales presentation, because it's a huge selling factor to see what it's going to look like before it's there.
Seeing is believing.
It is. It absolutely is. And the last thing I would just say is that if you're a contractor that's out there and you want to get more into standing seam or more into an exposed fastener type product, just remember, in my experience of driving around this state being the Contractor's Edge trainer, I've had a lot of conversations with contractors, and what I have found is that concealed fastener standing seam roofing is much more regionally based around bigger cities. And as you get away from the Tampa, Jacksonville, Tallahassee, city areas, the further you go into the country, the more popular the exposed fastener is, and it's going to be harder to sell that standing seam. So I wouldn't get discouraged if you're not selling a bunch of standing seam. Just think about your location, know your customer, and provide both options, and you never know where you'll go with that.
That's it. Well, Dave, appreciate that. It's a little bit longer answer to that question as compared to some of the other ones you may have seen, but that's okay. Lots of information. Ultimately, if you want the best of the best, standing seam has a lot of benefits. But truly, every product that we sell, every metal roofing panel, definitely has energy efficiency, longevity, safety, security, beauty. A lot of it comes down to aesthetics and personal preference, and of course, maybe even where your home is located. There's tons of benefits we haven't even touched on, like resale value and all kinds of other stuff. But nonetheless, when it comes to that question, I think we have the answer laid out, and you can judge what's best for your home and your project.
Absolutely.
Well, this has been Scott and David with Tri-County Metals. Thanks for your time, and you've been watching the top 10 metal roofing install related questions answered. Stay tuned for more.